My name is Mary. It wasn't always that way, but it was the name I chose when I found a new path in the Christian faith. Before that, I was known as Princess Miriam, heiress of one of the most influential royal families in the Arab world, a title that I carry only in my memory and that I hide to protect those who still live in that reality, even if they are now far from me. Today I am 23 years old, but I want you to go back in time with me, to a time that seems like it belonged to another life. I lived in a grand palace, made of white marble with golden veins. It was an imposing place, surrounded by beauty, but full of silence, rules, and pain. On the outside, everything was shiny. On the inside, I felt suffocated, trapped in a system where tradition and appearance mattered more than feelings and freedom. It was there, in this setting of luxury and suffering, that my journey toward faith began. To say that the palace was a home would be a lie. To me, it was a decorated prison. The hallways echoed with the sound of my own hurried footsteps, and the air was always saturated with the strong scent of incense, which clung to the fabrics of the velvet curtains and cushions. The gardens outside, on the other hand, were a sight to behold. Jasmine and roses danced in the wind under the desert sky, and fountains murmured as if trying to tell ancient secrets. But all that beauty couldn't hide what was really going on within those walls. My family, though powerful and respected, was falling apart from the inside. My father was the dominant figure, stern, ruthless, always ready to impose his will. He had several wives, as was permitted by our culture and religion. And me, I was the second daughter of the second wife, my mother. Ah, my mother, she was a light. Before everything fell apart, her laughter filled the palace like a joyful song, and her eyes shone like the stars that cover the desert sky at night. But over time, she withered. My father's pressure, control, and cruel words transformed her into someone almost unrecognizable. At every dinner, I watched her shrink before him. Any wrong gesture, any dish that wasn't to his taste, any smile that he thought was forced was grounds for her to be demeaned, humiliated. "You're a disappointment," he would say, with the coldness of someone crushing something between their fingers. And my mother, she would just lower her eyes, fighting back the tears. When I was 16, everything fell apart. My father declared the end of their marriage with 3 cold words: divorce, divorce, divorce. It was so quick, so cruel. I was in my room, reading a book of poetry, when I heard the scream, a sound I will never forget. I ran out, barefoot across the cold marble, and found my mother lying on the patio floor. She was sobbing in pain, her hands clutching her face, her abaya spread around her as if she had been thrown to the ground too. My father stood there, as if nothing had happened. He simply said, "You are no longer my wife," and he walked away without looking back. That scene has left a scar on me. After that, my mother was sent to a smaller house, hidden in the gardens behind the stables, a place where she became nothing more than a shadow, forgotten, ignored, invisible. And it was in this silence, in this space between pain and abandonment, that I began to search for something beyond, something true. And that was how I began to find Jesus. I would visit her in secret, escaping the watchful eyes of my guardians, as if escaping from an invisible prison. My heart would race every time I approached the door, the sweet scent of jasmine clinging to my hair, as if the garden itself were trying to follow me. Inside, everything was different from the brightness of the palace. Light barely entered through the gaps in the heavy curtains, and the air carried the bittersweet smell of stale tea mixed with dust and neglect. She always sat by the window, her hands clasped in her lap, staring into space as if trying to make sense of the void. Those eyes that had once shone so brightly now seemed dull. I would bring her tea, placing the cup carefully on the table, the steam rising in shy spirals. I would try to make her smile. I would tell her about the birds in the garden, the ones she loved, the ones she used to name one by one. But instead of smiling, she would whisper, "I failed him, Mayam. I failed your father." Those words tore me apart inside. I held her hand, felt the coldness of her skin, and the heat of helplessness rose to my face. She was sinking, slowly, and nothing I did seemed to reach her. Depression clung to her like a heavy blanket, and when I left that dark room, my eyes stung. The glitter of the palace, the gilded halls and the glittering chandeliers, all of it seemed cruel to me, a bad joke compared to her suffering. I grew up surrounded by luxury and royal traditions. I wore abayas embroidered with gold thread that weighed on my shoulders like the expectations of my family. I sat at long, silent banquets and flew in private jets to vacation homes in the mountains of Europe. I remember the white Alps outside the airplane windows, so different from the desert where I grew up. I received the best education money could buy. My tutors spoke in soft voices as they taught me Arabic calligraphy, patiently guiding my hand. The ink stained my fingers, and I felt a strange joy in forming the letters perfectly. Prayer was part of my routine from an early age. 5 times a day, we would spread our rugs on the cool mosaics of the palace and face Mecca. The Fajr prayer at dawn was the one that touched me most. There was something serene about that moment. During Ramadan, I would fast with my sisters. We would sit together, hungry, reciting the Quran that I knew by heart, verse by verse. It was a part of me, and for a while, it all felt right. But slowly, the peace I had found in these rituals began to fade. I began to see the cracks, small at first, but soon widening. Cracks in my family, in the faith they had taught me, in the image of perfection they had tried to uphold. My father and the men around him preached morality with fervor. They spoke of honor, discipline, religion. Women were to wear the hijab. Men were to remain pure. The law was enforced with a heavy hand, but in the shadows, it was a different story. I began to hear whispers, little conversations stolen between walls, stories of secret trips to distant islands, of parties in Western countries where anything went. One day, I heard my brother Khaled laughing with a cousin in the majlis. While they thought no one was listening, he bragged about a trip to Monaco. "The women there don't care who you are," he said, with a smile that made me shiver. "We drank until dawn. We gambled thousands. And the escorts? They were worth every penny." My cousin laughed. I pretended to read a book, but my hands were shaking. Nausea rose in my throat. These were the same men who would come home the next day with serious faces, leading prayers and demanding decency from the women around them. The same men who would scold a girl for showing an inch of hair outside her veil. And then it happened, the moment when everything stopped being just suspicion. My father left his cell phone in the library. The screen lit up with a notification and unlocked by itself. I hesitated, but curiosity, mixed with an old pain, pushed me. My fingers touched the device, and what I saw there changed everything. There were pictures, lots of them. One showed my father in a Las Vegas hotel, his arm around a woman in a dress so tight it looked like it was painted on. He was smiling broadly, carefree, holding a glass of liquor, a perfect portrait of someone in stark contrast to the pious man he pretended to be. In another picture, he was in a casino, chips piled up in front of him, his mouth open in a laugh I knew well. But here, it sounded fake, cold. My stomach churned. A silent nausea washed over me. How could he? How could he present himself as the guardian of morality, preaching purity and condemning the West, while living the very thing he claimed to despise? How could someone invoke the name of Allah so easily, and yet lie so coldly? It was at that moment that everything began to crumble inside me. The rules I had always accepted without question, the ones that said my mother deserved submission, that women should keep quiet, that obedience was a virtue, began to seem distorted. I began to see the patriarchal structure of our faith, of our culture, in a new light, and I began to question everything. That house, which I had been taught to see as sacred, was full of lies, and I felt alone in the midst of it all. At night, I would sit by the window of my room, the moonlight bathing the marble in a pale, cold light. Outside, the palace slept. Inside, my heart screamed, and I would whisper to myself, "Is this what God wants? Is this Islam? Is this what I was promised as truth?" But I couldn't say anything out loud. If I did, my father would punish me, maybe even throw me out, maybe worse. So I would just sit there, silent, looking up at the stars as if they could hear my soul. And every night, I would say the same prayer, "Show me the truth, give me a way out. I just want to be free." And the exit came, unexpectedly. A letter that seemed to shine in my hands. It was from Boston University, one of the most prestigious in the United States. They had accepted me into their international relations program. The envelope was heavy, the seal embossed in gold, and there in front of me was more than paper. There was hope. For the first time, I glimpsed a real spark of freedom. This wasn't just an opportunity to study. It was my escape. I began to imagine a new life, a place where I could breathe without fear, where my voice had space. where I could discover who I really was, away from my father's shadow, away from the princess mask, a life where my faith could be my own, and not a tool of control. I showed him the letter, shaking inside, clutching the paper like a shield. I went into his office, that stuffy place with its walls lined with books he never read, and the strong smell of his cigars permeating the air. He took the letter, read it in silence, and for a moment I thought he was going to tear it up. But then he nodded, his voice as cold as ever. "This will be good for you, Mayam," he said, leaning back in his chair. The gleam of his gold watch twinkled in the light of the lamp. "You will return educated, ready to serve your family. We have already arranged a marriage for you, a prince from a neighboring state. It will strengthen our alliances." My heart sank. I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded. On the outside, calm. On the inside, a hurricane. He wasn't finished yet. "You will not go alone. I will send an advisor with you. He will monitor your activities. Do not embarrass us, Mayam. You will represent our family. Do not forget that." I nodded again, as I had been taught to do. But inside me, something was changing. It wasn't just fear. It was something else. Something stronger. Challenge. Yes, I would have a shadow in Boston. Someone to watch over me, to keep the invisible chains off. But still, it would be the freest place I've ever known. That night, I packed my bags in silence. Each fold of my abaya seemed to hold a memory, some sweet, some painful, and as I placed each item inside my bag, I felt the symbolic weight of what I was leaving behind. I paused for a moment at the door to my mother's room. The light was still on, filtering in from beneath the door. I raised my hand to my lips and whispered a promise into the wind, low enough to not be heard, but loud enough to seal a pact with myself. "I'll come back for you, Mom. I'll find a way." As I stepped onto the private jet, the morning sun was just beginning to gild the dunes below. The desert stretched out like a sea of sand and silence, and as it fell away, I felt a knot of fear in my stomach. Fear of what I was leaving behind, fear of what I didn't yet know. But there was hope too, a timid, newborn hope. I didn't know what lay ahead, but for the first time, I was heading toward something of my own. I arrived in Boston in the fall of 2023. The air was different, fresh, with that clean smell of dry leaves, as if the world were renewing itself, a stark contrast to the scorching desert heat. I was 21 years old, standing in front of my new apartment building near the university. It was modern, full of glass, reflecting the gray sky as if it were hiding an entire universe behind its windows. My bodyguards followed me like shadows, men in dark suits, serious and silent, carrying my bags. Their eyes scanned every corner of the street, ever alert. A cruel reminder that my father was still with me, even here, on the other side of the world. But when I stepped into the apartment, the hardwood floors beneath my feet and the natural light flooding the rooms, something inside me clicked. I ran my fingers along the kitchen countertops, feeling the cool marble against my skin, as if I were touching a new beginning. I walked to the window. Below me were red brick buildings, trees tinged with gold and crimson. People walked slowly, laughing, living. I stood there, watching, and for the first time, I felt like I could actually breathe. In the privacy of that space, I took off my hijab. My dark hair fell to my shoulders, and for a second, I stood motionless in front of the mirror. I almost didn't recognize myself without the fabric framing my face. But then, I whispered, This is freedom. A small act, perhaps, but for me, it was like breaking centuries of silence. Of course, in public, I still wore it. I knew I was being watched. My father had assigned a guardian to accompany me, a man named Fele, who lived just down the hall, always nearby, always watching. His presence was a reminder that complete freedom was still a long way off. But even with him there, I was freer than I had ever been in the palace, and I was determined to make the most of every moment. Classes began. The rooms were full of voices, a lively mix of accents, ideas, points of view. I sat in the back, my notebook open, trying to absorb it all. The teacher talked about global politics, diplomacy, power, and each word was a spark, igniting thoughts I had never been allowed to have, ideas that were forbidden in my old life. And for the first time, I made friends, girls who laughed loudly, who asked me out for coffee, who spoke to me as if I were just one of them, not a princess, not a pawn in a power play, just me. Among them was Sarah, a sweet girl with blue eyes and a light-hearted energy that made me feel safe. She took me in effortlessly, pulling me with her into new worlds, She invited me to cultural events, always excited, and I went, curious, hungry for everything new. One night, she took me to a Christmas fair on campus. The air was cool and scented with pine and cinnamon. The lights on the shacks twinkled like stars stuck in the ground. Children laughed, snowflakes fell softly, and the sound of Christmas carols hung in the air like a gentle whisper. I walked between the shacks with a hot chocolate in my gloved hands, feeling the warmth rise to my chest. Sarah stopped beside me, her eyes shining as she looked at the lights. "It's all about Jesus," she said, blowing steam into the chilly air. "About the gift he is to the world." I looked at her. There was something pure in the way she said it. No pressure, no imposition, just truth. And in that instant, something inside me opened. The Son of God was born to save us. Sarah's words hung in the cool night air as if they had a life of their own. I heard them, but my mind reacted with silent alarm. From an early age, I had been taught that Jesus, or Isa as we called him, was merely a prophet, an honorable man, but not divine. To speak of the Trinity was almost heresy, a dangerous distortion of the truth. There was only one God, Allah, and anything outside of that was deviation. But even as my mind was in denial, something inside me stirred, like an ancient whisper, muffled by layers of fear and doctrine. I couldn't explain it, but her words, soft, non-judgmental, planted a seed, and though it was small, it began to take root, there in the silence of my heart, where pain and doubt had already made their home. But the little flame of discovery barely had time to grow. Months into the semester, I received a connection that crushed me. It was my sister, Aisha. His voice was choked, barely audible. Mommy is in the hospital. She tried to hurt herself." Everything around me went silent. I felt my hands tremble, the phone nearly slipping from my fingers. The city lights shone through my bedroom window, but they were blurred by the tears that filled my eyes. I immediately called my mother. Her voice, when she answered, wasn't her own. It was empty, broken, distant. "I am nothing without your father, Miriam," she said. "I failed him. I failed you." My throat closed up. I tried to tell her it wasn't true, that I loved her, that she was still my mother, that she was still everything. But she hung up, and I sat there on the couch, staring into space, the silence of the apartment filled with my sobs. I was thousands of miles away, and completely helpless. I blamed my father for the way he treated her, the way he broke her without ever lifting a hand, for the sharp words she had heard for years, the looks of contempt, the cruel abandonment. The talak he had spoken had destroyed more than a marriage. It had destroyed an entire woman. And now, she was trying to erase herself. I felt torn apart. Guilt crushed me. The images came back like blades. My father in Las Vegas, with a woman who was not his wife, the smile on his lips, the drink in his hand. My brother's voice echoed in my mind. "The women of Monaco are worth every penny." And all this while they forced us to live under strict laws, as if they were guardians of morality. I remembered the mosque in the center of the palace, its minaret pointing toward the sky like an accusing finger. Inside, my father led the prayers, his deep voice reciting verses from the Quran perfectly. People wept as he prayed, and I felt nothing but disgust. How could he live like this, pretending in front of everyone that he was a man of God while his real life was made of lies? How could the faith that I was taught as absolute justify all of this? My trust in Islam began to crumble. I saw my mother being torn apart by a system that claimed to protect her. I saw men like my father molding the religion to their own convenience. And me? I was tired of the lies. I stopped praying. My prayer rug sat in a corner of my closet, covered in dust, forgotten like a memory I no longer wanted to revisit. Its once sacred green fabric now seemed like a symbol of everything that had silenced me. I had also stopped fasting. The hunger of Ramadan that had once brought me closer to the divine now felt empty. My soul cried out for something greater, something true, something that I had yet to know. But with faith shattering came emptiness, a dark hole that grew inside me every day, a persistent echo that whispered in the silence of the early mornings. "You will never find peace. You will never be enough." I would sit on the porch, looking out at the city lights. They seemed so alive, so far from the pain inside me. And I would wonder, does Allah see me? Does he care? Or has he never been here? My mother's suffering, my father's betrayal, my own identity in ruins. All of this became a storm inside me, a storm from which I could not escape. and in a desperate attempt to silence the pain, I began to seek solace in the wrong places, dark places, where, for a brief moment, the silence seemed bearable. I met a group of international students at a random Friday party. Laughter, drinks in hand, music blaring from the walls, and there I was, hungry to forget. I joined them like someone jumping off a cliff without looking. Their chaotic energy was contagious, and for a while, it made me feel invisible. And being invisible, for me, was a blessing. The first time I drank it, the vodka burned my throat like a punishment, but seconds later, it turned into a heat in my chest, a strange, numbing heat, as if I could dissolve into the music, the flashing lights, the dancing crowd. It was like taking off a mask, or maybe putting on another one. I danced until my feet ached, until my head throbbed, until the past disappeared for a few hours. But the drink was not enough. Then came the marijuana. The thick smoke filled my small apartment as I sank into the couch, laughing at things that weren't funny. My mind wandered, far from my body. It was like living in a fog where everything hurt less, for a little while. Then came the cocaine. Fast, hot, electric. The first time was in a nightclub bathroom, the dirty mirror reflecting someone I barely recognized. Dilated pupils, smeared lipstick, empty eyes. The princess disappeared there, and in her place was someone lost. I started to really lose myself. I went back to parties wanting to sink. My days turned into nights. My nights turned into escapes. Classes left aside. My grades plummeted. Teachers tried to talk, send emails, but nothing mattered. I was already too far gone. I slept all day, with the curtains closed, because the sunlight was too aggressive. I started to wish it would all end, and the dark thoughts came. At night he wrote in his diary in shaky letters, the ink smeared with tears. Maybe there's no way out. Maybe this pain will never go away. No one will save me. Not Allah, not my family. And I failed my mother. She's destroying herself, and I'm too weak to do anything about it. I stared at the pills on the table like someone staring at a door. Small, silent, eye-catching, a solution. And then came the decisive night. I had drunk too much, used too much. I mixed everything together. Cocaine, pills, a little bit of anything that would stop my mind. I stumbled back to the apartment. Everything was spinning. The ceiling seemed to be falling in. My heartbeat was so fast it hurt my chest. I dragged myself to the bedroom and collapsed on the floor. The cold took over me, and for the first time, I didn't fight it. I whispered, "I'm going to be here. That's enough. It's over." And the darkness swallowed me. But then, a voice, screaming my name as if it were a cry for life. "Miriam. Miriam, for the love of God, wake up." It was Sarah. She found me lying there, shaking me, crying, calling 911 in a panicked voice. The paramedics arrived quickly. The red and blue lights of the ambulance tinted the walls. The sound of the equipment, the hurried footsteps, the technicians' shouts. My body was inert. My heart stopped in the hospital. For a moment, everything ceased. No sound, no light, no pain. But I wasn't alone. There, between life and death, between the world I knew and the one I didn't yet understand, something, or somebody, found me. It wasn't a void. It was a presence. Strong, soft, immense. I felt love, not judgment, not guilt, pure love, and peace, a peace I had never, ever felt. A soft voice inside me whispered, "I see you. I've always seen you." And I knew. It wasn't Allah. It wasn't fear. It was Jesus. He was there, seeing me at my worst, loving me anyway. He was walking toward the bridge, his presence making hell itself retreat. With each step, the fires dimmed, the moans fell silent, and the once suffocating air filled with peace. This was no ordinary man. He wore white, a simple robe that flowed around him as if made of light. His eyes. I will never forget those eyes. There was no condemnation in them, only love. A love that cut through my shame, my fear, my misery. I trembled, my face still wet with tears, unable to look away. He stopped in front of me, held out his hand firmly and tenderly, and simply said, "Miriam." It was like my name had weight for the first time, like I belonged somewhere. "You are not alone." His voice was like fresh water in a desert. "I was with you the whole time, in the palace, on the plane, at the party, on the cold floor of your room. I saw you. I loved you." My legs gave way. I felt like I was going to fall, slipping into the abyss, but he held me, with a strength that didn't come from muscles, but from grace. "You are not defined by your sins, nor by the pain you have suffered. I died for you. I walked through this fire so you wouldn't have to walk through it alone. That bridge, once so fragile, began to change beneath our feet. Cold metal became solid stone. Darkness was consumed by light, and I cried like I had never cried before, not out of fear, but out of relief. Who are you? I whispered, but deep down, I already knew. He smiled. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And in that instant, all the weight, all the pain, all the guilt disappeared. A peace so profound came over me that it seemed impossible that I had ever lived without it. The bridge now led into a valley of light. I could hear rushing water, the sound of laughter, of music. The distant garden, once blurry, now revealed itself before me in colors more vivid than anything I had ever seen on earth. But before I could take the next step, he gently touched my face and said, "It is not your time yet, daughter. You have a story to tell. Many are on the brink as you were. I want to use you to show what my love can do." And with that, he gave it back to me. Their colors changed with the light, as if they were alive, dancing with his presence. We passed trees whose trunks looked like marble and whose leaves made a soft sound, like wind chimes. Golden butterflies flew around us, and the sky had no sun or moon. It was lit by the glory of God. In every corner, there was peace. There was no fear, no shame, no pain, and I felt as if everything inside me had finally stopped screaming. Jesus stopped before a tall tree, its trunk twisted, its roots plunging into the crystal river. He placed his hand on my shoulder. "You were hurt, Mayam, abandoned, betrayed, taught to fear a God you didn't know. But I know you. I always have." My throat tightened. "But I blasphemed," I whispered. "I sinned. I used. I destroyed myself. I let my mother suffer." He knelt down in front of me, his eyes level with mine, and said, "I died for every tear you shed. For every night you thought you were worthless. I saw you on the floor, and I loved you even more. There is nothing you have done that my grace cannot redeem." At that moment, I understood something that no ritual, no law, no doctrine had been able to teach me. I did not need to earn God's love. It was already mine, unconditional, complete, alive. And I, Miriam, who had always seen myself as a shadow, a shame, a burden, was a daughter. "You belong to me, Mayam," said Jesus. "And now you must return. Tell the truth. Bring light where there is darkness. There are many who are as you were, lost, confused, thirsty." I wanted to stay. I wanted to never leave that place again. But he held me, and in that embrace was all the courage I would ever need. "Do not be afraid. I will be with you until the end of time." And with one last look at the sky that seemed to breathe praise, the light enveloped me like a cloak, and I woke up. Like silk, its soft petals danced in the wind, exuding a sweet scent, like honey and sunlight mixed together. I saw a majestic tree, its leaves shining with a soft light, its fruits glistening, and a deep desire grew within me to stay there forever, to taste that sweetness, to be a part of that place. We continued on to a city made of light, with gates made of gigantic pearls, streets that glittered with pure gold, and walls encrusted with jewels that sparkled in the eternal light. Jesus then showed me my life, and it was like watching a beautiful and painful tapestry unfold before my eyes. I saw myself as a child, running through the palace gardens, my mother smiling and picking jasmine flowers with me. I could smell the sweet scent of her perfume clinging to our hands. I could hear her sweet voice as she recited the Quran, her firm and loving hand holding mine during prayers. Then everything changed. I saw my father's furious scream on the day of the divorce, echoing through the living room. I saw my mother collapsing in a corner of the house, her eyes empty, her hands shaking, her spirit broken. Pain stabbed through my chest. I saw myself in Boston, partying, drugged, drowning in a darkness that seemed endless. I saw myself that night in my apartment, the city lights below, my hands shaking on the balcony railing, thinking about ending it all. I saw the despair in my friend Sarah's eyes as she found me. Jesus spoke to me. "You sought freedom in the wrong things, but true freedom is in me." He said he is the only true God, not just one among many, that the judgment I saw was an illusion, a fear created to keep me from him. Then he showed me his cross, his broken body, the darkening sky as he cried out, "It is finished." I saw the stone roll away from the tomb, his body rise again, his scars shining with a light that conquered death, opening the way for me to be with God. The shame of my past still weighed heavily, but his love wrapped around me like an embrace that said, "I did this for you, Miriam." Jesus spoke lovingly about the beliefs that have shaped my life, saying, "I am the way to the Father, and the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are one." A perfect love, not a contradiction. I could see that unity again, a dance of light and love, and I finally understood that it was not a lie, but the most beautiful truth. He told me, "Your family's hypocrisy does not define me. I am justice and mercy, and I am with all of you." I felt a deep peace come over me, a peace I had never experienced before. Not because I was perfect, but because he loved me for who I was, for his grace. Then Jesus showed me two paths forward. In the first, I continued to run away from the pain, drowning in drugs and emptiness, rejecting faith. I saw my body cold, alone, lying on the floor of my apartment, pills scattered around, my eyes empty. In the second, I surrendered to his love, left behind fear and guilt, found the strength to forgive and truly love. I saw a life full of light, of purpose, where I was no longer alone. I saw my family at my funeral, their faces set, cold. My father, his voice hard, said with contempt, "She was a disgrace to us." My mother stood there, frail, sobbing, whispering through her tears. I lost her. Beside her, my sister Aisha buried her face in her hands, her voice choked, sadness marking every movement. She never found peace. I found myself back on that dark bridge, the scales tipping against me, falling into torment, separated from God forever. The flames consumed me, the screams echoing endlessly, a scream trapped in eternity. A crushing weight of regret washed over me, for never having found the truth, for leaving my family behind in so much pain. But then Jesus showed me another future, a path filled with hope, freedom, and life. I saw myself following in his footsteps, my face alight with peace, my eyes shining with true joy. No drugs, no darkness, only light. I was in a simple apartment in Boston, a cross hanging on the wall, on the table, an open Bible, the pages yellowed and worn with time. My hands were clasped in prayer, seeking his presence. I saw myself in church, singing along with other believers, my heart overflowing with praise. And there was Sarah, smiling warmly as we prayed together, her hand in mine, sharing a love that transformed. I saw myself reaching out to other young women, their faces lined with pain, their eyes filled with hope. I told them about Jesus, about the peace he had given me, and I saw their faces light up, filled with life. Jesus spoke to me, "This is the life I want for you, Mayam. I love your mother, your sister, your family. I want you to come back and share my truth." I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face, my hands shaking as I reached out to him. I asked, "But how, Jesus? My family? They'll reject me. They'll call me a traitor. I've already lost so much. My mother, my home, my title. How can I go on?" He knelt beside me, his warm hand resting on my shoulder, filling me with a strength I had never felt before, a light that illuminated my heart and dispelled all fear. "It will not be easy, Mayam. You will face rejection, perhaps even danger, but I will be with you. I am the true God, and I will give you the peace you seek." Then he said something that will never leave my memory, his voice soft and powerful. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." These words flooded my being with hope, as if a huge weight had been lifted from my chest, as if I could finally breathe for real after so long. I looked at him, my heart full, my voice firm even as tears fell. "I will follow you, Jesus. I believe that you are the Son of God, the only true God. I want this peace, this life. I want to be with you." He smiled, his face shining like the sun, and the light around us grew brighter, enveloping me in warmth, love, and a promise I knew he would keep. I saw the celestial city for the last time, the shining throne, the crystal clear river, the garden filled with radiant life. I knew I would never forget that place, that moment, that love. Jesus said, "Come back, Mayam. Be my light in the darkness." I nodded, my heart set, ready to follow whatever he asked, even if it meant losing everything I knew. I had seen the lie. Now I would seek the truth. I had seen judgment, yes, but I had also seen the truth of heaven. I had found the one true God. Jesus was the way, and I was ready to follow him, no matter what the cost. Suddenly, I woke up. I was in a hospital room in Boston. The air had that sterile smell of antiseptic that filled my nostrils, mixed with the soft, steady sound of machines beeping around me, a strange but comforting rhythm, like a beat that connected with the faint throbbing in my head. My body felt too heavy, my limbs weak, as if they had been dragged from a place far away. Every breath hurt in my chest. I opened my eyes slowly, squinting against the harsh, cold light of the fluorescent lights overhead, which formed a blurry white mosaic. I turned my head with difficulty and found Sarah sitting there, next to me. Her face was pale, her blue eyes red from crying, and her hands were shaking as they held a small cross-shaped pendant, which swung gently between her fingers. When she realized I was awake, she let out a deep sigh, full of relief and emotion. "Mayam, you're awake," she said, her voice trembling. "Thank God." She leaned in to hug me, her arms wrapping around me with a warmth that soothed me, and I felt her hot tears slide down my cheeks. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry, and my voice came out hoarse. "What happened, Sarah?" I asked with difficulty. She pulled back a little, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her sweater, her hands still shaking. "You overdosed, Mayam," he said, his voice cracking. "I came home and found you on the floor of your bedroom, not breathing, with pills scattered around. I thought I had lost you. I called 911. They brought you here. The doctors fought for hours to save you. They said your heart stopped for a minute. You were gone, but they brought you back. It was a miracle. Miracle." The word echoed inside me. Sarah cried again, covering her face with her hands, and a deep guilt washed over me. I had put her through all of this. My pain had touched her life. But then I remembered Jesus, his face, his voice, his promise. An overwhelming peace began to spread within me, drowning out the guilt, fear, and shame. With my fingers still trembling, I took her hand and said, "Jesus saved me, Sarah. He is the Son of God, the only true God. I have seen him." Her eyes widened, and a shy smile appeared between her tears. She squeezed my hand tenderly and said softly, "You had a near-death experience, didn't you? Tell me everything, Mayam." I took a deep breath, feeling the cold air enter my lungs, and began to speak. My voice grew stronger, filled with a warmth that warmed my soul with each word. I told him about the bridge of Azirat, the burning abyss, the scales weighed down by my deeds, the torment that consumed me, the fear of having failed Allah, of everyone. I spoke of how Jesus crossed the bridge to me, his scars glowing, his voice assuring me that he was the Son of God, the only way to the Father. I described how he took me to heaven, showed me the true afterlife, revealed the Trinity as a perfect unity of love, and offered me a freedom I had never known, freedom from hypocrisy, from pain, from confusion. "He told me, Sarah," I said with conviction, "he is the truth. He is the way to eternal life, not Allah, not a paradise earned by works. I can be truly free through him." Sarah listened to me with her face lit up, her eyes shining with joy, her hand still firmly in mine. "I've been praying for you, Mayam," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I've been praying that you would find Jesus, that you would feel his love." "That's amazing," I replied, feeling my heart open wider than ever. She came closer to me, hugging me again, and together we began to pray. It was my first prayer to Jesus. The words felt strange, yet so right, as if they had been stored inside me, waiting to be said. "Jesus, thank you for saving Miriam," Sarah said, her voice firm and full of faith, "for revealing your truth to her. Guide her, heal her, and never abandon her." I felt tears welling up in my eyes, a warmth growing in my chest. I whispered with all my soul, "Thank you, Jesus, for saving me. Help me to follow you." In that moment, I felt his presence, a gentle, welcoming peace. I knew with certainty that he was there with me, just as he had promised on that bridge, in that moment that would change everything. When I was discharged from the hospital a few days later, I returned to my apartment. Outside, the city was quiet, and the fresh air carried the sweet scent of coming spring. I stood in the middle of my room, the same place where I had almost lost my life. I looked at the floor, at the carpet stained with the hurried footsteps of the paramedics who had saved me. A shiver ran through me, but then my eyes turned to the window, the sunlight streaming in, bright and full of life. I felt the presence of Jesus there, a light that dispelled all the darkness. I knew I couldn't go back to that life of pain and darkness. I had to live the life he had shown me, a life of freedom, truth, and love. I began attending Sarah's church in secret. It was a small building on a quiet street in Boston. The facade was weathered brick, the stained glass windows reflecting the last colors of the sunset. Blues, reds, golds depicting scenes from the life of Jesus, his outstretched hands, his face full of love. I entered through the side door, my sweatshirt pulled up over my face to hide who I was. My heart was beating fast as I looked around, trying not to be seen, afraid that Faisal, my advisor, might recognize me. The interior of the church was welcoming. The air smelled of old wood and candle wax. The pews, marked by time, held stories of faith and hope. I sat in the back, without my hijab, with my hair down, feeling a freedom I never knew in the palatial mosques, where every glance felt like a judgment. The pastor, a gentle man named Jacob, with gray hair and a serene smile, spoke about grace, the love of Jesus, and how God's favor didn't need to be earned. It was a gift to all who believed. I listened with a heavy heart, the words sinking in and healing wounds I didn't even know I still carried. When he read John 3:16, his firm voice echoed in the hall. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. The congregation sang, their voices joining in harmony, singing songs like Amazing Grace and How Great Thou Art. I felt the presence of Jesus so vividly, as if he were there, sitting beside me, holding my hand, conveying a love so real I could feel it in my bones. I began reading the Bible with Sarah, hiding the book under my bed. The soft pages glided through my fingers, the words filled with a truth I had never known. At night, while the city sparkled outside, I read in silence, my heart pounding, trying not to make any noise so my advisor wouldn't notice. It was then that I found John 14:6. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. An emotion filled my chest, a deep certainty that this was the truth I had been searching for, the truth that could free me from everything. I whispered prayers to Jesus, my voice low, the words still strange but so natural, as if they had been stored inside me, waiting for the right moment to be spoken. Jesus, help me, I prayed. Heal my mother, guide me, show me how to live for you. I felt him hear me, that calm peace spreading inside me, covering all the noise of my past, the pain of my family, the fear of what was yet to come. It was a peace that enveloped me and gave me strength, so I decided to get baptized. A step that I knew was not just symbolic, but a complete surrender, a real commitment to Jesus, a clear declaration that I was his, that I chose this new life, this new identity. Sarah helped me set everything up in secret after work at the church. The building was quiet, the low hum of the heater filling the space. The stained glass windows, dark in the moonlight, still looked amazing, their soft colors reflected on the floor. Pastor Jacob was there, his face lit up with a warm smile, and some friends from church joined us as well. Their presence brought comfort, their joyful faces reminding me that I was no longer alone. We stood near the small baptismal pool in front of the sanctuary. The water was cool, its surface rippling in the faint moonlight. Daniel, one of the church brothers, looked at me and asked, "Mary, do you believe? Jesus is the Son of God who died for your sins and rose again to give you eternal life." I nodded, tears streaming down my face, but my voice came out steady, full of emotion. "Yes, I believe." He smiled and slowly lowered me into the water, saying, "I baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." As I emerged, drops of water falling from my hair, I heard the congregation applauding softly. Their faces shone with genuine joy, and a feeling arose within me that I had never felt before, as if I had truly been reborn, leaving behind the old Miriam and becoming someone completely new. That's when I decided to change my name to Mary, a symbol of my new identity. I kept my last name secret for safety's sake, aware of the risks that my choice could bring. But my secret didn't stay hidden for long. Faisal, my advisor, was watching me more closely than I realized. He noticed my absences on Sunday mornings, my excuses about the studies that supposedly occupied me, and then he saw a photo that a friend had posted online. In the photo, I was in a Bible study group, my face uncovered, my smile wide, holding a cup of coffee, with the cross hanging on the wall behind me. Faisal didn't hesitate. He took the photo straight to my father. A few days later, The phone rang in the silence of my apartment, the shrill sound that seemed to announce what was to come. I answered, my hands shaking, and heard my father's voice, cold, sharp, furious. Each word he said was a blow to my chest. "Mayam, you have shamed us," he shouted, the echo of his voice filling my ears. "You have turned against us, against the faith, against your family, against your country. You were seen in a church, worshiping a foreign god, rejecting everything we stand for. You are a disgrace, a traitor. Return to Islam immediately. Pack your bags and go home, or you are no longer my daughter." My heart raced, my breath caught in my throat, fear tightening like a knot in my chest. In my mind's eye, my mother's face appeared, her dull eyes, her shaking hands. I thought of Aisha, my sister, and the crushing pain of perhaps never hearing her voice, her laughter, again. I thought of the palace, of the life I had known, of the crushing weight of my father's expectations, and I felt a wave of panic wash over me, a part of me wanting to obey, to turn back, to make right all that seemed lost. But then I thought of Jesus, his face on that bridge, his voice promising me peace, his love that freed me from the darkness. I felt his presence in that moment, a strength growing within my heart, a light that dispelled all fear, and I knew, with a certainty that could not be denied, that I could not go back, not to hypocrisy, not to pain, not to a faith that had only left me empty. I took a deep breath, my voice trembling but firm, and said, "I can't, Father. I have found the truth. Jesus is the Son of God, the only way to eternal life. I will stay here and follow him." There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line, as if the whole world had stopped for a moment. And then, in a low, final voice, he said something I would never forget. "You are dead to us." And the line went dead. The click of the call echoed like a door closing, to my past, to everything I had been. I sat on the couch, the phone slipping from my hand, tears streaming down my face. My body shook with choked sobs, a deep pain that seemed to tear at my soul. My family completely isolated me. They revoked my title, cut off my finances, and cut off my access to the royal accounts. They erased me from their lives as if I had never existed. I learned from a cousin who was still in secret contact with me that my father had publicly disowned me, declaring me a traitor to Islam and the crown. He had forbidden any member of the family, even my mother and sister Aisha, from having any contact with me. I faced threats from distant relatives, anonymous messages filled with hate and curses, saying that I deserved punishment for apostasy, a terrible crime in my home country. His words were poison. "You will pay for this, traitor. You can't hide forever." A cold chill ran down my spine as I read those messages. My hands shook, and the city outside my window, which had once felt like a haven, now felt less safe, less welcoming. I moved into a new apartment, a small, humble place that I could afford with Sarah's help. The walls were bare, the space stark compared to the luxury I had known, but it felt like mine, a place to start over. I packed my things in the silence of the night, my hands shaking as I folded the few clothes I had left, my heart heavy with sadness and loneliness. I mourned the loss of my family, especially my mother, whom I had not spoken to since her hospitalization. Her voice echoed in my mind, full of pain and confusion. I let him down. I didn't know if she even knew about my conversion, if she had heard the rumors, if she would ever forgive me. Lying in my new bed, feeling the mattress creak beneath me, the city lights shining through the thin curtains, I cried. My sobs were muffled by the pillow, and I whispered to Jesus, "Did I do the right thing? Will I ever see my mother again? Will she ever know her love?" But then I felt his presence, a gentle warmth, a whisper deep in my heart. "I'm with you, Mary. You're doing what I asked." And I clung to it, as if it was the only thing that could sustain me. After my family disowned me, I had to rebuild my life from scratch. A daunting task, like climbing a mountain with no path, no map, only faith to guide me. I was no longer a princess, no longer bankrolled by royal wealth. My title had been stripped, my identity rewritten. But in that loss, I found a freedom I had never known, a freedom that came from Jesus, from knowing that I was his, that I didn't have to earn his love. It was mine, a gift I could never lose. I got a part-time job as a campus tutor, teaching Arabic to students, their faces filled with excitement as they tried to master the unfamiliar sounds of the language. I sat in a small room in the university library, the air filled with the smell of old books and fresh coffee. My notes spread out on the table. I smiled as they practiced, stumbling over the words, and felt a small joy blossom in my new life. For the first time, I was earning my own money. A modest salary, but mine, a symbol of my independence, of the life I was building with the help of Jesus. The church became my new family, a community that embraced me with love. Their arms were open, their hearts were warm. Sarah was my rock, her apartment a safe haven, where we would sit on the couch, wrapped in a soft blanket. She would make tea, the steam rising from the mugs, the comforting scent of chamomile calming me. We would talk for hours about Jesus, about life, about the future. I would share my fears, my hopes, my prayers for my mother. Pastor Danielle became a mentor. Her office was a cozy space with shelves full of books and a small cross on the desk. I would sit there and talk about my NDE, my conversion, my inner struggles. She would listen intently, her kind eyes full of understanding, and she would say, "God has a plan for you, Mary. Your story is powerful, and He will use it to reach others." He attended a Bible study group that met every Wednesday night in one of the church rooms. The air was warm, filled with the smell of fresh coffee and homemade cookies. The group was small but close-knit, their faces familiar, their voices comforting. We read the Bible together, the pages soft under my fingers, the words full of truth and hope. Verses like Matthew 11:28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." I felt tears in my eyes, knowing that Jesus had fulfilled that promise. I was finally resting in Him for the first time in my life. We shared how Jesus was working in our lives. I told them about my NDE, about the bridge, about Jesus' scars, about the peace He had given me, and they listened, eyes wide, some wiping away tears, others nodding, hands reaching for mine. "Your story gives me hope, Mary," a woman named Emily said one night, her voice soft, her hand resting on my arm. I felt a warmth in my chest, knowing that Jesus was using me even in the midst of my suffering. I began to heal from my past, a slow and delicate process, like restoring a torn tapestry thread by thread, with Jesus guiding my hands. The church also offered counseling, and I met with a woman named Rachel. Her office was small but cozy. A potted plant graced her desk, and the air was scented with the lavender scent of a candle she lit at each meeting. I would sit on her couch, a soft blanket draped over my lap, and talk about my mother, her breakdown, her pain, the guilt I felt for not being there. I would talk about my father, his hypocrisy, his cruelty, the anger I still carried, and the forgiveness I struggled to find. I would talk about the drugs, the suicidal thoughts, the darkness that had nearly consumed me. Rachel would listen to me with kind eyes, her voice soft and welcoming. "Jesus sees your pain, Mary," she said, "and He is healing you, little by little. Let Him carry these burdens." We prayed together, her hand in mine, and I felt Jesus lifting those weights, helping me forgive my father, even though I couldn't see him, helping me free myself from guilt, shame, and fear. I stopped using drugs. Cravings disappeared as I filled my life with worship, with purpose, with love. I woke up every morning with sunlight streaming through the window, the city waking up outside, and I prayed on my knees on the floor, hands clasped, the cross on the wall in front of me, a living reminder of His sacrifice. "Jesus, thank you for saving me," I said softly, "for loving me, for giving me this new life. Use me to help others find you." I felt His presence like a warmth in my heart, a peace that sustained me throughout the day, even in difficult moments, in the silent battles against the loneliness that sometimes insinuated itself without invitation. It wasn't easy. The pain of my family's absence was a constant companion, a dull wound that never completely disappeared. I thought of my mother, her voice echoing in my mind. I failed Him. I wondered if she knew about my conversion, if she had heard the rumors, if she would ever forgive me. I thought of Aisha, my younger sister, her laughter, a memory I held tight, playing in the palace gardens, weaving jasmine wreaths, our hands sticky with the delicate scent. We hadn't spoken since my father had disowned me. I didn't know if she hated me, if they had called her a traitor, a disgrace. I looked at old photos on my phone, the screen lighting up the darkness of my apartment, their faces smiling at me. I cried, tears falling onto the screen, my heart aching with longing. I prayed for them every night, my voice a whisper. "Jesus, please touch their hearts. Heal Mom. Let her know your love. Bring Aisha to you. Let me see them again. I also faced online harassment from my home country. The news of my conversion spread like wildfire, a scandal that fueled anger and hatred. Messages appeared on social media, anonymous accounts with pictures of swords or flags, the cutting words, "Poisonous traitor, you will pay for this. Apostates do not deserve to live." I would read it late at night, my hands shaking, my heart racing. The city outside my window seemed less safe, less of a refuge. I would close my laptop with a shaky breath and pray, "Jesus, protect me. Give me strength." I felt his presence like a shield around me, his voice in my heart. "I'm with you, Maria. Don't be afraid." And I clung to that promise, trusting him to keep me safe, to guide me through the storm. I felt a calling, an urgency within me to share my story, to help others who might be trapped, as I had been, especially young women from similar backgrounds to mine, who knew the weight of patriarchy, the pain of hypocrisy, the anguish of feeling invisible. I began speaking at church, sharing my NDE, my journey from Islam to Christianity, the freedom I had found in Jesus. I would stand at the front of the sanctuary, with the cross behind me, its weathered wood, its presence a comfort, and I would tell them everything. My life as a princess, my family's hypocrisy, my mother's suffering, my descent into drugs, my overdose, and how Jesus met me on that bridge, showing me the truth, giving me new life. The congregation listened, their faces a mixture of admiration and tears, some nodding, others wiping their eyes, hands reaching for tissues. "Your story is a testament to God's love, Mary," Pastor Daniel said after one service, placing his hand on my shoulder with a warm smile. "He is using you in ways you can't even imagine." I felt tears in my eyes, knowing he was right, knowing that Jesus had a purpose for me, a plan that I was just beginning to see. Here I am now, in 2025, sitting in my small apartment in Boston. The warm spring air is streaming in through the open window. The city is alive outside. The birds are chirping. The traffic is distant. I am 23 years old, a far cry from the princess I was years ago, but I have never felt more alive, more at peace, more myself. I look at the cross on my wall, simple wood, a reminder of Jesus' sacrifice, of the love that saved me, and I think of a moment that happened a month ago, a moment that filled me with hope, a moment that showed me that Jesus was still working, still moving, still answering my prayers. It was a cool night. The sanctuary of the church was warmed by the glow of candles, their flames flickering in the dim light, casting shadows across the stained glass windows. Colors, blues, reds, golds, danced on the walls. The room was full. The congregation had gathered for a special event, their faces full of expectation, their voices softly whispering to one another, the air buzzing with anticipation. I stood at the front, hands shaking slightly, heart pounding, but I felt Jesus with me, his presence a steadying force, his voice in my heart. "Share your truth, Maria." I took a deep breath, the scent of candle wax and pine filling my lungs, and I began to speak, my voice steady, the words flowing like a river, carrying my story to the people in front of me. I told them everything. My life as a princess in a marble palace, the jasmine-blooming gardens, the banquet where I wore gold-embroidered abayas, the weight of expectations that oppressed me. I told him about my father, his dictatorial control, his hypocrisy, the pictures I saw of him in Las Vegas, his arm around a woman, a drink in his hand, as he enforced strict Islamic laws at home. I told her about my mother, her fading laughter, her broken spirit, the day my father divorced her, her scream echoing through the palace, her mental decline, her hospitalization, the guilt I carried for not being there. I told her about Boston, my escape, the freedom I had hoped for, but the pain that followed, the drugs, the parties, the suicidal thoughts that consumed me. The night I overdosed, my body collapsing, my heart stopping. I told about my NDE, the Akarat Bridge, the fiery abyss, the scales weighing my actions, how I felt myself falling into torment, believing I had failed Allah, failed everyone. I told them how Jesus came to me, his white robe shining, his scars a testament to his sacrifice, his voice telling me he was the Son of God, the only way to the Father. I told them how he took me to heaven, showed me the true afterlife, the Trinity as a loving unity, the serene garden, the city of light, my grandmother's sweet smile, the peace that surpassed anything I had ever known. I told how he showed me two futures, one of death and despair, the other of life and freedom, and how I chose him, how I returned, how I gave my life to him. I spoke about the cost of this path, the rejection from my family, the threats I received, the loneliness that followed me like a shadow. But I also spoke of the joy I found, the peace that sustains me, the new family I discovered in the church, and the purpose Jesus gave me for living. I looked at the congregation, saw their faces wet with tears, some lit with smiles, and said, Jesus saved me and can save you too. He is the only true God, the way to eternal life, the peace we all seek. When I finished, the room fell silent, filled with emotion, until a wave of applause filled the room. Some were standing, others were wiping away tears, and their voices echoed in unison. Amen. I felt tears welling up, my heart overflowing, knowing that Jesus had used my story, my pain, to touch those hearts and reveal his love. After the service, I sat in the back of the church, holding a cup of tea, the steam slowly rising, the warmth calming me, my heart still racing with the emotion of the moment. A woman from church, wearing a name tag that read, Beautiful, approached me with a kind face and bright eyes. Maria, this arrived for you, he said, handing me an envelope. The paper was in perfect condition, the handwriting on the front familiar, a script I hadn't seen in years. My hands shook as I opened it, my heart pounding. There it was, written in Arabic, the words a lifeline, an unexpected bridge to a past I thought was lost. It was from my cousin Noor, who was studying in the UK. Her careful but warm words reached me across the distance between us. Dear Mayam, or I think Mary now, she wrote in impeccable handwriting. I heard about your conversion from a friend who still speaks to Aisha. I was shocked at first, angry at the thought that you had betrayed us, betrayed Islam. But I have been reading about Jesus, about Christianity, and I have been thinking about our family, the hypocrisy, the way they treated your mother. I don't understand why you chose this path, but I want to know more. Can we talk? I'm in London, but I can call you or maybe visit you when I'm off. I miss you, Miriam. I felt a wave of hope wash over me, tears streaming down my face, my hands shaking as I held the letter, the paper crumpling beneath my fingers. I looked at the cross on the wall, its simple wood gleaming in the candlelight, and whispered a prayer. Jesus, thank you for this. Please touch Noor's heart like you touched mine, and please heal my mother. Let me see her again. Let her know your love. I replied to Noor that same night, the pen gliding across the page with a mixture of joy and longing. Dear Noor, I wrote, I would love to talk. I miss you so much, and I can't wait to tell you about Jesus, about the peace he has given me, the freedom I have found. I know the pain in our family, the hypocrisy, the lies. I've lived through it too. But Jesus is the truth, and I want you to know him. I sealed the letter with steady hands now, feeling a renewed fire in my heart, a clear purpose. I knew that Jesus was working in my family, answering my prayers, opening doors that I thought were closed forever. I knew the road ahead would not be easy. My father might never accept me. The threats might continue. The loneliness might persist. But I trusted Jesus to guide me, to bring my mother and Aisha to him, to use me to share his love with the world. I felt his presence, a constant light in the darkness, and I knew this was just the beginning. A new chapter in the story he was writing, a story of redemption, of freedom, of love.